Some find it easier than you expected? Some find it a bit harder than expected? Yeah? Oh. Okay. Remember, let me take a wild step in the dark. Those of you who found it difficult, let me guess. Was this the part where you got stuck? Getting a positive intention on the negative part? Really?
I just know it's a great...
Do you just want to pass the microphone over just to see what happened?
I just want to share just a phenomenon, especially how much our body gives signals sometimes as gifts. As Eric is telling me the situation, he's literally saying, you know, when the in work when the phone rings, sometimes he doesn't pick it up because he just doesn't want to deal with these people. And as he's telling me this, it's his left hand. And I'm like, well, can you think of a time where you don't, when the phone rings, you don't know what's going to happen, but you did pick it up and it was awesome, better than expected. And he's like, yeah, I can think of a few times of that. So that's a really cool thing. But even afterwards, when we talked about it, so naturally, you know, this is negative, I asked him, you know, how did he feel? He's like, what's crazy is I answer the phone usually with the negative hand.
Yep.
So I asked him for next week when he goes back just to answer it with his other hand and see what happens.
It's a very common thing. The unconscious, symbolism, the unconscious works at the symbolic level, and it abounds all over the place. And that's one of the ways to make this work. So, good job, you. Go ahead here.
I didn't get stuck, but I got great feedback from what I actually had done because of what the lady had asked me to do. I had had the experience in it, and the minute she said, can I say, what is it? Yeah. It was on a dissertation, and she had the rock in the one hand and light in the other hand, and she just kept saying it was a rock, but I knew that, or I felt myself projecting, and I'm saying, but there's more than the rock, is it not? The criticism that you may be getting before you hand that. So I fed her, which that was a big mistake. I didn't allow her to do that.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you realized that. That's the key thing to stay out of. Notice how the bit that's hard is preventing yourself jumping in, telling them what it is, especially when you can see it. It's so clear. It's like, oh, but. You have to let them do it, otherwise the realization is no good. It's not the words that count. It's what happens inside that gets them to the words that count. So it's a great learning. Thank you for sharing that. Exactly. Go ahead.
I was working with Judith, and she gave me a great conflict. Should I take this new job that's been offered to me, or should I stay in the old one?
Classic one.
And I just don't know what to do about that. So I had her, visualize something in one hand. Was this the new job, whatever it was. And she really couldn't visualize it until it became kind of a dot. And then in the other hand was another dot of a different color. But she could never really enunciate what the problem, what the conflict was, because I never gave her do you want to stay in your it was two problems. Do you want to stay in your current job? What are the pros of that? What are the cons of that? Versus new job, same job, new job, same job. There were just like too many choices, and I realized that afterwards because she was very confused, I think, and could not latch on to any of it.
Well, that's a good lesson to learn, that you can actually set the frames so that you actually get something useful to work with. Realize that there is a way to actually work through that conflict despite all the extra things. It's just you have to work a lot harder. Remember we said to you before? And you guys have done it the hard way because you're doing the pattern number 4 without all the other failures in between, or rather all the other successes in between, that get you to this point, which allow you to actually do this cleanly, which makes it a lot easier, right? Because that would have taken care of things like, do I even want to be in my old job? Am I doing the right sort of thing? All these things will have been taken care of by the other stuff. And it'll be a very clean conflict, a very clean, secondary gain type thing. But if you haven't done that, it gets a little bit harder. Now, can you still do it? Can you still do the work? Hell yeah, of course you can. It's just you have to work harder to get the result, that's all. And you just experience exactly that. Can we keep the microphone over there?
I just want to know if that is the solution, that I just focus, that we say, okay, your current job, what's good about your current job? What isn't good about your... I mean, is that the solution to it?
That is one solution.
Okay.
And the other one is you can actually do this whole thing with exactly what she presented. So I want to stay in this job, I want to move to the other job. It's just you have to be more subtle in the way that you ask a question about intention and behavior. It's just harder to do that, that's all.
Yeah.
So it's hard, you have to have more intention, you have to have more pressure, you have to have more attention to be able to get good answers to these things from that point, which basically means you need to be more skilled at this.
Okay.
That's it, right? But the other version would be a simpler way of doing it, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, I ran into the same situation where it was like we've got all the reasons for in one hand, and all these things are nebulous over here, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is far too much work. And I said, okay, I want to bring you back out of this, and what we're going to do is we're going to hold this, because we'll be able to come back to this later, so we can do this at another time. And just basically, I just realized, hey, I've got a lot more work to do, so does she.
Exactly.
So it's just like, boom, end it, and allow
So
it.
this is where you've come up against the limitation of this format of a seminar in terms of time, really. And that is, the clean version to do this is to take a problem, run through the other 4 patterns. Chances are they'll all work, 3 patterns. Chances are that they'll work for most of the things. So you have to run through a whole bunch of problems until you find one which is cleaned up by the other things, but somehow it comes back, and then you can do this easily, right? Do you see what I mean? That's the hard bit. If you can do it here, that's the hard bit done, because you've done it without any setup at all. So in some respects, you guys are doing it the harder way, and that means out there it's going to be easier. Just note that in terms of normal everyday work, this will be something you very rarely use, because you won't really need it if you do the other things right. Make sense? It's very rare that you'll actually need it. Do we need it with you, Dave? I don't think so, right? With the cats? I don't think there's any conflict there. Now, if he called me up in 2 weeks and said, the whole cat thing was great until I got home and this happened, then it's telling me, bingo, I need this. But most of the time, you'll just get exactly what he gave us last, yesterday, coming up on stage going, it's so exciting, this is great, you're done, you'll never even have to think about this. So it's good to know and realize that you probably won't be doing it all that much. Was someone over here first? Someone here first, and we'll come to you in a second, Gary. Go ahead.
Sue was able to help me get symbols very easily and define the symbols and the whole bit. There were definite physiological changes for me when I chunked up and got the
intention,
the meaning. Put the hands together and got the new symbol, but there didn't seem to be any physiological change in integrating the new symbol.
That's not what has to happen. How did it feel when the hands came together and the symbol became one? Did you feel like a sense of stuff's happening and you're not quite sure what it is, or a little confusion, or a little sense of breathing harder, or anything like that as the hands came together and the new symbol emerged?
I didn't really notice. Did you notice it?
Who you working with?
Yeah, there didn't seem to be much of a
it could be a couple of things. One thing that could be, and I can't comment unless I actually see what it is, right? But one thing that might be possible is that it was such a minor issue that the integration was so light you couldn't perceive it, at least consciously. That might be one thing.
Yeah, well, it was Cheetos versus abs.
All right, that's probably what it was in that case. Okay. Yeah, it's such a minor thing that if you never resolved the conflict, you probably wouldn't care, which means resolving the conflict was so minor that you probably didn't notice, right? And it's just like saying, some of you have been lifting 100-pound weights, and some of you are lifting a piece of paper and going I can't really feel this. I suspect that's exactly what happened.
Okay, thank you.
Just because of what you said, that's all. But in reality, you'll be doing this in a situation when it's something which is more important. That's why they bothered coming back. So again, it all becomes self-creating. It creates the context for you. If you have to do it, then the context is already there for you to do it successfully. You see the beauty of it? Hey, Gary, thank you.
So that in Dave's case then, when he came back for the reintegration, if he called you 2 weeks later, said, listen, I got a problem, your intention wouldn't be, I want to pet a cat versus I don't want to pet a cat, or what would your...
Well, first I've got to find out what happened. So let's assume, and this of course not for you, Dave, this is for Andy, who's got misuse. Let's say Andy was great and he goes home, and then he goes to visit his mum, whose mum's got cats, and he suddenly starts getting all spooked out again, right? So then I'm going to ask, here's the part of you that isn't afraid of cats, and here's the part of you that is afraid of cats in your mum's home, right? And then that's the parts I'll pull out. Now, if I don't get a strong shift between the two parts as he's talking about that, I'll let him tell me about it, because he's already got a split in his mind, because the key, the trigger point will be they'll say something like, it's like I'm two people. Like on the Monday I was like doing all these things and it's great, and on the Tuesday I went to my mum's house and it was this. So now you have the two parts automatically are coming out. It's self-creation. Does that answer your question? Go ahead, Rashid.
How important is the symbol? How important are the symbols coming together? Because when we just finished that, there was no. Erica asked me what was a symbol, and I didn't have a symbol. I'd already finished the exercise. So if you don't have a symbol, is that? It's not
a problem. I mean, you may have. What I suspect has happened is because you worked pretty quickly. Once you decided to get the job done, you just did the whole integration before you actually had any conscious awareness of it, so it was done.
There was a feeling of one feeling sorry for the other, but there was no symbol that came to mind or anything.
Oh, okay, so if that was what I would have heard, it's possible that it's all clean, and the one thing I'm having back in mind, it's just a possibility, is you didn't fully integrate. It's just one tried to overload the other one in a different way, because the negative side still has to have a resource, a valid offering to the process. It can't just be subsumed by the other.
No, the other side did have the feeling was that this side, the negative side, actually was trying to do something and didn't really know the right way of doing it, and the other side was accepting.
What was the resource the negative side brought to the table?
It was misguided protection.
Is that a resource?
No.
What's the resource? This is the problem, okay? You haven't, at this point here, you're still not valuing. Here's the thing. The integration basically happens, or the split happens because the negative side, people think, it's bad, I don't want it. Do you mind if I share what we talked about there?
That's fine.
So he had a great example of it, like going to the gym versus a voice saying, like, don't do it, and it's like, and trying to stop him. He still goes to the gym, but the voice is annoying him as he's trying to stop him, right?
So it's been going on for years, by the way. And it doesn't work anymore. But
so here's what he was doing when I asked him about the negative side. He says, "Oh, what's the positive intention?" Like nothing. I just want to fight it and do it, right? Now, this is a very common. This is, shall we say, a more elaborate or a more externalized version of what people do, which is, this is bad. I wish I could just cut this hand off and get rid of it forever. That's why the part exists. He's resisting the part, and what you resist will persist. Do you see what I mean? There's by the way, no personal judgment. It's just, we all do it. I do it on plenty of things. It's just that's why we have these parts having, right? So, now we have the highest intention and like integration begins to happen. And now what I suspect is happening here, and it's just a question of doing an extra little step. If the resources is basically to say, value this half. This has something valuable to give to the equation so that you can remove the boundary and blend the two together and they become something greater than they were individually. Now, if this has nothing to offer, is there any value here? So if you can't value this, how can you integrate it? How can you remove the boundary? Right? All that can happen, the best that can happen is you can smother it, or you can ignore it, or you can fight it, but those are just variations on the same theme. So you have to make sure there is value there. You've got to force them to do it. I mean, not force them, you have to push them and put pressures like, do you mind if we play with this?
No, that's fine. Because my question was actually, now that you brought that up, the identification that you made was it was actually something from way back in the past that it was trying to protect. So what would that serve purpose now, though?
Well, you just saw the whole regression thing. It's got split off, and the behavior is stuck. It's the intention that's clean. It's the behavior that's stuck. And that's why you have the problem. Because the behavior got stuck somewhere, and it hasn't got access to all the other resources to be more creative about it, doing it in a better way. Right?
Okay.
Now, it still has resources. For example, if we focus your attention on the negative part, the apple symbol, right? As you think about that, and its intention is really what? The ultimate intention is to do what?
To make me feel good.
It's to make you feel good. And that's something valuable, right?
You're right.
And it's been doing that for many, many years, even though the behavior hasn't worked, for many, many years it's been kicking around trying to get its job done, right?
Right.
So it has some kind of resource, a quality that's probably quite valuable to you, that if the other side had it, the bit that's actually going to the gym, might actually help it to do its job better. What might that be?
See, there's a conflict that's being created by you saying that.
I know, and that's why the integration didn't take fully.
I see.
It's that conflict that we're flushing out.
Because if that was the symbol of the apple has been trying to do its job for years, and it's failing miserably in its job, and yet, no? Okay.
You misunderstand.
Okay.
Its behavior is failing. Its intention is not. Its intention is to make you feel good.
Right.
Its behavior is the bit that's not right. Let me give you an example. Just think, see how this fits. As you think about that apple part of you that's been doing this voice inside your head to stop you going to the gym for years, but it's failing, right? And its behaviors would not be appropriate now given who you are as an individual, right?
Right.
So forget the behavior for a moment. Its intention is a good one, to make you feel good, right?
Right.
I mean, that's fair. If it could genuinely make you feel good, it would be a great part to have, right? If it could genuinely make you feel good,
right,
that would be a great part to have, right?
Right. The struggle I'm having...
We're not there yet. Just take one step at a time. Don't jump ahead.
Okay.
If it could make you feel good,
right,
that apple part would be a great part to have, right?
Right.
So if you could really honestly say, look at that part and go, it's making me feel good, you'd go, what a great part to have. Only, it's failing because the behavior is not working, right? But here's the interesting thing. It has qualities, say resources, that if the other part, the part that's actually going to the gym, had them, it could do its job better. Let me give you an example of something, and you just tell me whether or not it fits.
Okay.
It's been around for a long time, right? So it's bloody persistent. If the other part was as persistent in its job, do you think it might be easier to do?
Yes.
So that might be a reason it's worth valuing. So it's got something there to share with the other side, right? Could teach them a little bit about persistence.
Yeah.
How about this? You know, you've been fighting it back and it's losing, but it keeps on coming back, right? Despite the fact you fought it back. Do you ever forget to do this? You know, to forget to doubt yourself or to try and stop yourself going to the gym?
No.
So it's kind of not just persistent, but it's kind of pretty smart. Like it remembers to do its job. So it's kind of pretty faithful. Right? Now you're getting it.
It's like really painting. It's like really painting a lot of layers of color over something that really doesn't deserve any paint, type of thing.
And that doesn't deserve. That's the reason why you still have it. When you realize that its behavior is the bad thing, not its intention. Right? If it's behavior, if you let go of the behavior, if you just look at it in terms of what it can do, it can be persistent, it can be faithful, you can kick it and it'll still come back.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Those are good qualities to have.
Absolutely.
If you can, shall we say, cherish them or honor them or respect those qualities and look at it and go, those are great qualities. Now let's attach those qualities to a better behavior. Wouldn't that be something?
Absolutely.
Now as you think about that, doesn't that other part of you, the arrow, the one that goes for it, wouldn't that go like, yeah, I'll take some of those qualities.
Absolutely.
Show me how you do that.
Absolutely.
Now we're getting the integration. Because you see, to the extent you can value those qualities in the negative part, to that extent the behavior will disappear because it'll learn the behavior from the other part of you, the bit it never had access to, because you kept cutting it off and sending it away. And to the extent that you can actually look at it and go, wow, you actually have something to bring to the table on this one. Not the behavior, it's not what we want, but the other stuff. That's the good stuff. To that extent, you accept it and you gain the power to transform it. And already, as you think about that, something's happening inside you, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. There's a question that's arising.
Sure.
And the question is, how do we know that the qualities that we want from that negative side will be the ones that take and not the ones that we don't want? And that's, again, probably my conscious mind asking that question.
That's a good answer, because that's exactly right.
Right.
Because why would it hang on to qualities that it doesn't need anymore? Right? Its intention is to make you feel good. That's it. It just doesn't know how to do it. It has good qualities, the perseverance, the faithfulness, the getting kicked and still standing up and doing it again. Right? Those are good qualities. It just doesn't know how to apply them in terms of behavior. That's what the other side can do.
Almost feels like it might be easier to just pith myself.
Pith?
Yeah, you know the little, anybody know pithing?
No.
No, never mind. That's a, you know, with the frogs.
I have no idea what that means. I'm sorry.
It's taking a needle and you put it in the brain and you just mix it up a little bit.
That's exactly what you're doing. You're mixing it all up so that all that's left is good side of both things.
Right.
At that point, the integration takes place, and now that side becomes more perseverance. You can kick it and it'll get up and you'll still go to the gym because there's no distinction between them anymore. It'll have the behavior it needs. It'll have the other resources that will make its job easier. And you actually probably surprise yourself with other ways of doing the whole fitness thing and feeling good that you haven't even considered yet, because when they're together, they're stronger than the two halves individually were.
So the question is, right now in this room, has anything changed in the last 2 minutes? Has anybody, is there anybody else feel a change in temperature in here? Yes? Okay, because I'm actually starting to perspire now, and I haven't perspired at all in the last 2 minutes.
Personally, I don't know if I feel the same as I did before, so maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. I suspect part of it may be just you're working a little bit harder, and it may not be, I don't know. From here, I feel the same as before. That's all I can say. Yeah, same, pretty much. The main thing to realize, whether or not the temperature changes and it's actually an internal thing, the key thing to realize is what we just talked about. This is a great example of what makes an integration fail and what you have to go through. And this is great because I really had to push you for this, right? Because part of your pattern for being able to go to the gym was to reject this so vehemently that you could do the other thing. But together, they're much stronger. That's all I'm saying.
And more effortless.
And that's the key word. Did you hear that? That's what happens when you get integration.